Hello and welcome to the CSW podcast. For this episode, we're going to be doing things a bit differently. We're actually going to be pulling back the curtain and giving you an all-access look at the making of Civil Service World magazine. So instead of interviewing a senior civil servant, I'm going to be turning the mic on my own colleagues, Beckie Smith, Tevye Markson and Susan Allott, the team that actually produced the magazine. We're going to get the inside scoop on the stories that they are most excited about, the major themes that they've been reporting on, and what you can expect to read in the current issue. So, Tev, I am going to start with you. Who have you been speaking to for the autumn issue?
So Jeff James, for 10 years, he was the chief executive of the National Archives. Recently, he became chief executive at Disclosure and Borrowing Service. And yeah, we previously interviewed his predecessor, which was really interesting. And then they got in touch with us about interviewing Jeff. And yeah, really easy guy to talk to. Big smile. You'll see if you read the feature, you'll see the photo of that big smile, and that was coming out a lot in the interview. And yeah, really one of the really interesting things which we get straight in the feature, you'll see him talking about his old role at National Archives, the PhD he was doing for 7 years, which is on 19th century workhouses. And then he talks about how that all perfectly led to this job at DBS, where it's like some of the work he's able to do kind of brings out what he wrote about in his PhD.
Okay, great. And you explore that. And he's also got quite an interesting hinterland. And obviously, we want readers to go and read this interview with Jeff. But what did he do? He had this whole other career before he joined the National Archives, didn't he?
Yeah, he did plenty before, and that included 14 years in the Navy, working in submarines, and you'll have to see how he found that in the piece.
I feel like you've interviewed quite a few people who've got a military background. It seems to be your specific groove within the CSW team.
Yeah, there was Simon Bollum. They all have quite complicated names, these. So there was Defence Equipment and Support. It's not the easiest to say out loud, but yeah, Simon Bollum. The Bollum line was the headline for that one. It's a good, memorable one.
Oh, well, thanks for telling us a bit about that, Tev. I've read it several times, but listeners should go and check it out. Who have you interviewed for the upcoming winter issue?
So yeah, just recently, a week ago, I interviewed Paula Sussex, who's the new Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman. That was a really nice interview. That'll be coming out in our winter edition. And bizarrely, a week after I interviewed her, I bumped into her getting the Eurostar back to the UK.
When you spot senior civil servants out in the wild, like to us, they're kind of minor celebrities or major celebrities, but I think they can normally walk amongst us undetected. If they meet a CSW journalist, they can often expect to be accosted. But okay, Tev, thanks very much. We'll check out your interview with Paula in a couple of months' time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more as well. We've just got started on this new issue, so first bit of work for it. I'm sure there'll be more to come.
Excellent. I'm now going to turn to Susan Allott, our reporter and features writer. Susie, tell us what you worked on for the current issue.
So I wrote a feature about the government's Best Start in Life strategy, which I think I called that feature Sure Thing. And it was a comparison of the Best Start programme and the 1990s Blair era flagship programme Sure Start. The reason being that the Best Start in Life strategy came out in July, and there were immediately a lot of comparisons to Sure Start in the press. And around the same time, I think a bit earlier in about May, the Institute for Fiscal Studies published an evaluation of Sure Start.
Of the original Sure Start?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. The kids who benefited from Sure Start as toddlers were all reaching adulthood. So it was a really interesting moment, I thought, to compare Sure Start to the new Best Start programme.
I read that feature, very much enjoyed it. What was your, I don't like the phrase takeaway, but what was your biggest takeaway from researching and writing that feature?
I think probably something that Nihal Davison said from the Institute for Government, which was that she said Sure Start and Best Start are similar-ish in terms of their ambition and their objectives, but government is putting a lot of money into funding free childcare for nursery provision. Of course, the funding-free nursery provision helps the growth mission because it helps parents go back to work. Whereas the Best Start programme is intended to be the driver of the opportunities mission, which is intended to help children and young people as they grow up. So her point was that actually the bulk of government funding is going to the growth mission. And as a comparison, Best Start was a much smaller budget. And consequently, it wouldn't have the same impact that Sure Start had over time.
It's really interesting and nuanced. That whole thing about nurseries and getting people back to work hadn't occurred to me before I started reading it. So yeah, that was a good one. What else did you write?
I wrote a piece, an interview with 2 Directors General from the Department for Business and Trade, Caleb Deeks and Gavin Lambert, who are a male job share, which I thought was quite interesting.
Quite a rare phenomenon.
It is a bit of a rare phenomenon, although it's becoming more common, not specifically the male job share thing, but job shares generally, obviously becoming more and more common in the civil service. And something that I think is really interesting about it, I think people go into job shares because they want that kind of work-life balance. These 2 job share guys, that was their primary motivation. But like a lot of job share partners, they found that actually the biggest benefit was the support that they offer each other in the role in the form of really honest, frank feedback, and perhaps the ability to say, I just don't know what to do about this. I'm really stuck. And they can support one another through that. Whereas perhaps you might not feel as able to go to your line manager with such a problem in case it didn't reflect well on you.
I mean, nobody knows better than the person who is doing your literal job with you, that if you're trying to solve a knotty problem at work. So yeah, no, I can relate to that as somebody in a job share. Am I right in thinking you also helped put together Director's Cut, which is our occasional feature where we meet some directors doing interesting things across government?
I did. We got a really nice one from a woman called Tessa Jones, who is a director for the agri-food chain at DEFRA.
The thing I like about this feature is that we obviously ask them what their current role entails, but we also ask them some more kind of colourful questions, like what's your proudest achievement to date, or what was your first job in government? If you weren't a civil servant, you would be. But we also always ask them what the most bizarre thing that's happened to you at work is. So if you can read Tessa's, just because I think our listeners will enjoy it.
So this is the most bizarre thing to have happened at work to Tessa Jones. She says, "This actually happened when I wasn't at work, which is what made it bizarre. My brand new husband and I started our honeymoon by taking the sleeper train to Penzance. We were just settling into the restaurant car when over my G&T, I saw a familiar face coming towards me that I couldn't quite place until I realised that it was my minister." How to spoil your honeymoon.
And that's why I love these, because we just get little insights into officials' personal lives without being too prying, obviously. But before you go, what have you got coming up in the upcoming issue?
So I'm working on a really interesting piece about marking 2 years since the introduction of the working from home mandate. I put a post up on LinkedIn asking former or current civil servants to contact me if they had any views on it. And as you can imagine, lots of people have been in touch, which is brilliant. So that's shaping up to be really interesting. I am still looking for contributors, though, if anyone wants to contact me.
Anonymity guaranteed, I might add. Yeah.
Particularly if you do like going into the office, because so far I don't have too many of those. So that would be helpful.
Ah, that's interesting.
And I am also I'm going to be interviewing Jonathan Simcock about a book he's written called The Delivery Gap, about why government projects fail and what can be done about it. So I'm in the middle of reading that book. It's really interesting. So I'm looking forward to interviewing him.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. Well, we will look out for those in the winter issue. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I am going to quiz Beckie Smith. We have been colleagues for several years now, and you've been CSW's loyal deputy editor for what, 7 years? Is that right?
I've been at CSW for 7 years. I think about 5 of that was as deputy editor, yeah.
And you have been absolutely indispensable in that role. And I'm very pleased to tell any listeners who might not have gathered, after many, many wonderful years of co-editing CSW with Susanna Brecknell, we are stepping away from the day-to-day editing of the magazine, and we are stepping into a new adventure, taking on a more strategic role. We're doing more events and podcasting, but we are very, very happy to be handing the baton of the magazine over to Beckie, who is becoming our new managing editor. And I can't think of a safer pair of hands. So, Beckie, this was your first issue as editor of the physical print mag. What were your highlights? What was it like changing roles? And yeah, who did you speak to?
It's been a lot of fun so far. It's a very different rhythm, I think, to the work. So I've worked out that I've probably spent about the last 12 years doing daily news. And so switching over to a quarterly print magazine is very, very, very different pace and a very different rhythm of things. But it's been really interesting. It's been a lot of fun having the freedom to kind of decide what goes in the magazine and be creative in that way. So this issue, we focused on the government's opportunity mission, the breaking down barriers to opportunity mission. So we spoke to lots and lots of interesting people for that. We got to speak to the mission head, Tony Foote, who told us about what's happening across government. We looked at work that's happening in Sheffield for the Community Mission Challenge, which is very interesting, working with local government and with businesses and with civil servants there. We looked at the Best Start Early Years programme. One of the pieces that I really enjoyed writing for this one has a nice crossover with the piece about Best Start and Sure Start, actually. I spoke to Paulette Hamilton, who's the acting chair of the Health and Social Care Committee, and they're doing an inquiry into children's first 1,000 days of life. So how well they're prepared for that in government and through the health service and that kind of thing. The MPs visited, as part of that, an existing family hub, which is what's being rolled out through the Best Start programme, and looked at all the support that's available for young families, young parents and children. I found that really interesting because she spoke about her own experience of having been a single mother and a Black woman, what that experience was like, how she felt supported by health visitors and staff. She talked about how in her constituency of Birmingham Erdington, which is a very deprived area, there just aren't enough healthcare staff to do those roles. There aren't any family hubs and there isn't that kind of support. So it really brought home for me how important the work that's happening around this area is. And I grew up in the West Midlands. I had friends who grew up near Erdington. So that was quite moving for me.
And you also spoke to someone else who is new in their role. And in your editor's letter, you said you were going to kind of crib some of the wisdom that she shared in her interview with us. Could you say a bit more about that interview? Who was that with?
I would say I shamelessly pilfered from our interview with Janet Hughes, who is the new Director General for Civil Service Reform and Efficiency. I always forget the efficiency.
Another long civil service job title. We shouldn't be surprised at this stage that the job titles are quite long.
I feel like I should have more words in my job title at this point.
Yeah, no, let's add a few. We'll add a few. Janet wrote for us years ago, I think. I don't think we've ever spoken to her in the flesh, but she's been another friend to us and she's taken part in various bits and bobs. And I think you went back to something that she said to us, was it about 10 years ago? And tell me about that. Tell me about pilfering our own archives in order to generate your questions for this interview.
Yeah, so Janet Hughes wrote for us back in 2016 when she was at the Government Digital Service. And back then she was talking about boldness. And the question she was asking in that piece was, what would the civil service be like if boldness was a value like the Nolan Principles? And it was really interesting. That's clearly something that she values a lot. And she spoke in this interview about wanting to give civil servants space to be bold and to try things, which I really loved. But one of the things that she wrote about in her piece was the weird whoosh of terror and relief that comes from real heartfelt boldness, which was a phrase that I really loved.
So she wrote that for us in 2016.
She did. And so, of course, we had to ask her, when was the last time you felt that? And she said, taking on this new job, which I very much related to. But yeah, in the interview, she comes across as really human, really thoughtful in a way that I really enjoyed reading. She talked about wanting to make it easier for civil servants to work together across different divides and different areas of government. In civil service world, we're always talking about, silos and that kind of thing. And it's obvious that she wants to create an environment where that kind of collaboration can happen in a really healthy way. And she also talked about bringing the spirit of One Team Gov into the work that is done in the Cabinet Office and in government in general.
For those of us who only have a dim awareness of the One Team Gov movement, can you tell us a tiny bit about what that is?
One Team Gov describes itself as a global community working together to radically reform the public sector through practical action. So it's kind of a grassroots movement that's been going for a long time that she was part of. And part of the spirit of that is working openly and collaboratively with people in the civil service and the public sector, and then bringing in expertise, practitioners from outside those areas to benefit from their knowledge.
She also, she's one of these senior civil servants who has a real, loads of hobbies. She described herself, or she has described herself in the past as a allotmenteer, a reader, an over-enthusiast. So you asked her what she is currently growing, reading and over-enthusing about, which I thought was a lovely final question. But we're not going to spoil that for readers. Can you tell our listeners, should they want to read the magazine in the kind of traditional format, if they don't have a print copy, firstly, they should get in touch with us if they are in the senior civil service, because they are entitled to a free print copy. Just give us your address and your name and we can sort that out for you. But also we put all the pieces online. We kind of drip feed them onto our website and they go out in Civil Service World's daily newsletter. And we also have a PDF of the entire magazine and an e-reader. So there are no excuses for not reading it. How can people get the PDF, Becky, or access the magazine on the e-reader?
So if you are signed up to our daily news bulletins, which I absolutely recommend, there's always a link to our latest issue in there, so you can read the ebook version there. Also, if you go to our website, there's in our in-depth section, we have the magazine up there in both PDF and ebook form. So whatever suits you best.
Is there anything else from the magazine that you would like to point readers towards? I think you spoke to some other select committee chairs as well.
Yeah, this is a feature from a few years ago, actually, that I've revived, which I think is going to be quite a lot of fun over the next few months, called The Select Few, where we are quizzing select committee chairs on what it takes to do their job well, what they're up to at the moment, and what their priorities are going to be over the next 12 months. So in this issue, the spotlight is on the Treasury Committee, the Joint Committee on Human Rights, the Joint Committee on the National Security Strategy, and the Environmental Audit Committee. So one of the really big ones and some of the more kind of niche ones. But they've got a lot of interesting stuff in there. They're working on obviously very important things that are happening across government. So I would recommend having a look at that.
Yeah, that's a nice spread, isn't it? I've always wondered what's the collective term for a group of select committee chairs. A grill of select committee. I mean, that's terrible.
I love that. Maybe that's our mission for the next issue, is to come up with a collective noun, a barbecue of select committee chairs.
All right, brilliant. I'm biased, obviously, but it was an incredibly strong issue and I very much enjoyed reading it from the relaxing position of not having put it together myself. But it was brilliant and long may it continue in your safest of hands. Tell us quickly, what have we got coming up in the winter issue?
So it's still fairly early in the cycle, so we don't have everything sorted, but we do have some things that I'm pretty excited about already. So next issue, we are going to be looking at the government's Clean Power mission. So we'll be looking at how departments are getting on with their greening government commitments. We'll take a look at Great British Energy, what it's doing then.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some other kind of themed things that we're not quite ready to talk about yet, but it's going to be exciting. We've got the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman piece that Tev was talking about earlier. We're also going to be talking to the new PermSec at HMRC, JP Marks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And the first Parliamentary Counsel, Jessica de Montenay. I think she's been in that post for just over a year. So it'll be interesting to hear what she's been up to, what she's working on.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to do a plug for something that you commissioned me to do, which I actually cannot believe I've never interviewed this person before, because it feels like my whole professional life has been building up to this moment. But I finally interviewed Jonathan Lynn, co-creator of Yes Minister. The occasion is that he has written a new play called I'm Sorry, Prime Minister, which has been billed as the final chapter in the Yes Minister franchise. So I asked him all the questions that I have been wanting to ask him for 12 years, 11 years. Obviously, lots of very friendly questions, but I wanted to ask him if he had any regrets about the caricature of the all-powerful puppeteer bureaucrat who was controlling and thwarting the ambitions of democratically elected politicians. And does he feel at all responsible for the rather negative perception of civil servants among the general public? So I'm very intrigued to see what he says to that, and a number of other things. I asked him about the thick of it, what he thought about that. What would Sir Humphrey make of AI? So that's one that I'm particularly really looking forward to in the next issue.
I'm excited to read that too. I think that's going to be a very popular feature this coming issue.
That is unfortunately all we've got time for. Thank you so much to my colleagues Tev, Becky and Susie. Hopefully we can make this a tradition and get you back on every quarter to tell us what's in the magazine every time we have a new issue out. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the Civil Service World podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and also to sign up to our daily newsletter if you're not already a subscriber. You can do that by visiting civilserviceworld.com and clicking on the red button that says register. Thanks so much, and bye for now.